Welcome everybody at the third edition of our online talk show on Science, Technology and Society. It's wonderful that you're back here, the third time already. It almost becomes normal. A very nice intro, I think, again. And tonight we will discuss the impact of the virus on the economy. What is the impact on aviation, on the University of Twente, on the life of students, their income? Alumni, how do they cope with the impact of the virus? Our guest here in the studio is Hans Heerkens, expert in aviation. Welcome, Hans. So with Hans we will discuss the impact of the virus on flying. Victor van der Scheijs will be online, our chair of the UT. With whom we will discuss the impact of the virus on the university. What are the things that the UT faces to deal with? Anneke Sols will be online as well, of the Story Lab, discussing with us how people see the future in terms of the virus and what they might even want to give up, how they might want to change their lives. And we have also some items pre-taped already. Dafa Paramita, about maybe losing her job. Will she have to lend more money? And Björn Haring, living in the United States, an alumnus of the UT, is speaking with Joe Laufer. So, a lot of things to do, and we start tonight with Hans Heerkens. Welcome, Hans.
Thank you.
It's actually wonderful to see you, because you've been ill for quite a while, so I missed you, and I think the country missed you because of all your nice reports on the radio and TV on aviation. So I'm really happy that you can be here with us. So we read a lot in the news about flying less. Of course, there are not so many flights, but people say maybe in the future it might really change. Maybe we will lose the pattern of flying so much. What do you think? Will this indeed be true, or is this a temporal hiccup?
I think it is a temporal hiccup. Yeah. Although I have to say that I can not. Somebody said prediction is difficult, especially if it concerns the future. I think it's a temporal hiccup. I think in 5 years' time or so we will fly, but we will never get to the level of pre-corona again. We will always lag a few years behind.
Okay.
But we will fly again, absolutely.
Okay, so you think it will actually just put us back in time for a while, but it will grow again and we will start to take back our pattern of flying that we used to have?
Definitely, yes. Yeah. Of course, why? Some people say that what you're doing now, internet and all that kind of stuff, will change our behavior. Yes. But I think that you still want to meet people in person, and what we have seen in the past, that new possibilities for traveling or for getting into contact with people also generated a need for traveling and see people in person.
So you say because of the new digital technologies that we have, we can meet new people, and we will ultimately also have the desire to meet them in person. So actually
exactly.
The curve will be exponential again, like we saw with
I
the
think
virus.
so, yes.
Instinct. So there are also developments that might show a different kind of direction. So for instance, France will invest money in Air France KLM, but only under the condition that they will almost stop flying between Paris and Amsterdam. That they will force people to take the train between the two airports. Wouldn't that then in the end be a reduction of flying, or do you also think that this will be temporary?
No, on certain routes there will be a reduction, and I think that's a very good thing. But in many places you don't have trains. But if you have a piece of concrete, you can go all over the world. And the train route is from A to B, is just from A to B. Yeah. So in the end you will, between destinations that are not sufficiently dense for train travel, you will aircraft will be there still.
Yeah. I mean, of course, people who have this focus on the environment are now really hoping that, for instance, within Western Europe, we might really cut down on all those short flights between Amsterdam and Barcelona, Amsterdam and Brussels, Amsterdam and Paris, Amsterdam and Berlin, and that we then might, exchange that for train travel. Would that be a realistic scenario, or do you think, given how aviation works, that this will not happen?
It will only happen if there is the political will to do it. Then aviation has always been a highly politicized industry, and if the politicians say we don't want to fly all this flying anymore, yes, then.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I mean, if it takes you 2 hours to get to Barcelona and it takes you 2 days by train, you will fly. And you will even save the expense of one overnight stay, which you have with train.
Yeah, of course.
Although
Okay.
personally, I would encourage people to fly only long distances. I would like it, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Exactly. So, of course, there's a lot of impact also on the aviation industry. Do you know anything about that? I mean, are there less planes being built at the moment, or will the new planes that are being built be more safe or more environmentally friendly or something? Do you see any impact?
Yes, at this moment, Airbus, for example, I think they only produce 30% of the planes that they used to produce. And they expect, the CEO of Airbus thinks that only in 2025 or 24 or so, will we get back to the old level.
Okay.
So indeed, fewer aircraft are being produced. I don't think that the aircraft will change all that much simply because it's a pandemic, but it has been said that there will be more pandemics. In that sense, we are lucky that this corona pandemic is relatively kind to younger people. I mean, I don't like pandemics, but if scientists say that there will be more pandemics in the future, and that will have an impact, but not this one.
Exactly. We also have a question from the people at home who actually asked, how do the pilots stay trained? How do they maintain their skills now that they actually cannot fly? Do you have any idea about that?
Well, that already was a problem. Singapore Airlines even had some aircraft which they used only to teach long distance pilots to take off and land. I think they quit that for some reason, but that is a problem. Now you can in a simulator you can really train very well. So that is not really a problem.
Okay.
And there was already a problem, even before this corona crisis, that pilots, because planes are so highly automated, they lose their flying skills. And I personally, but that's a very controversial standpoint and not everybody agrees, I would say leave the pilot out. Because flying, basically, you can do it unmanned. And computers are better in flying than pilots. Please, for the normal A to B flights,
Great.
use unmanned planes.
This is exactly what I wanted to ask you next, because you are an expert in unmanned aircraft. That's also how we know each other a bit from work. And so I was wondering, do you believe that this situation we are in now will give a push to unmanned flying because of the dangers of having people on board?
Well, it is not clear that there is so much of a danger, really, because there is, for the Dutch readers, the people who can speak Dutch, there was a very interesting article in the Volkskrant today about that. There is much more chance of contagion on airports than in the aircraft themselves. Okay. But I think that if you want to make aviation safer, we would want to fly unmanned, especially if you can. For military planes, it's more difficult, but for civil planes, I would really say why not. But some of my pilot friends disagree hardly for this.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm also not sure if I would like to step in such a plane, but if I hear you, I think I should feel safe.
Well, but that is the problem that people very often say, I don't want to fly without a pilot. And they don't realize that most of flying is done without a pilot. He is sitting there. Some pilots, they have complete university studies in the cockpit because they don't have anything to do above the ocean, and for hours and hours they are working on their university study.
Wonderful. Sounds like an ideal job.
So and most landings are some airlines even say that they want their pilots to make automatic landings because they are for passengers on average more pleasant.
A completely different question. So KLM, a Dutch icon, a national symbol. Do you think it's a good idea that the state puts so much money in KLM, or do you think, why bother? Let's just fly Lufthansa or Air France or British Airways?
Well, the first part of your question is why I understand politicians. I mean, they are being looked at now, and they have to maintain employability. But yes, indeed, I would say if you want to spend money on supporting the aviation industry, put it to Schiphol or put it into the economy of Holland. Because I sometimes said with a bit of humor that every euro spent on Amsterdam generates more than a euro spent on KLM. Because you want to get the people to Amsterdam.
So it's more than an economic symbol. It's really about the economy of the country that comes with the aviation. That's what you say, basically. Right?
Yes, but I realize that politicians, they're looking at this KLM and this Dutch brand, and they want to support that. But I don't think it's a very good idea.
Last question about our own work. How do you feel about flying less as an academic? I mean, also myself, I used to fly all over the world, sometimes crazy for one day to Tokyo or something. I hardly dare to say it. So we stopped doing that now. Do you think that's a good thing? Should we keep stopping?
Well, I think I'm a bit of an economic liberalist. I would say that if you travel for business, you should be able to do so, and if at least on the condition that the price that you pay is in accordance with the environmental impact and other things.
Yeah.
So I don't think that you should be forbidden to fly, but perhaps or certainly I would advocate prices getting higher. I would really like that, but don't forbid people to fly.
Maybe this is a good moment to Skype in our second guest, Victor van der Scheijs, who might still have a platinum status with KLM, I think. Victor, do you still have a platinum status?
I actually have platinum for life. Can you
for life? I just wanted to ask, have you lost it? But, so you will never lose it, actually.
No.
So how do you feel about it? I mean, you are flying all over the world to represent the University of Twente everywhere. And now suddenly you can't do that anymore. Do you think this is a good thing? Do good things come from this? Or do you really feel handicapped, as it were?
Actually, a little bit of both. Frankly, I already brought back flying a bit, being inspired by the initiative by Albert van den Berg, who said clearly well, is it really necessary to take that plane every time? So that also made me reconsider whether it was indeed necessary to always use that plane. So I indeed already reduced that. But the world economy works that way. You need flying. You really need that personal contact so now and then. But yes, I guess this crisis is also a wake-up call. And I really believe that quite a number of people are really pondering, was it indeed necessary? And I'm one of them, to fly it as much. Or can I maybe postpone? Can I maybe reduce a little bit? But still, academia is also very much about personal contacts, brainstorming, feeling the atmosphere, really understand what it is about, and you have to do that with face-to-face meetings.
Yeah, interesting. Well, indeed, if I hear you, I think many people start to feel like this. So that might be a new balance. We discovered that some things could be done online as well, but without any real contact, it's also going to be hard to stay connected, as it were. In your former life, if we may say that, you worked at Schiphol in higher management. So of course you are also a kind of an aviation expert. How do you think about the state support for KLM? Do you think this is a good thing?
Frankly, I disagree with Hans, I'm afraid, because I believe the government does not have much of a choice. KLM being the flag carrier, and the Netherlands being an extremely open economy, you need a strong airline to make sure that you are connected to the world. So maybe people don't like it, but I guess it's necessary to really keep the economy up to speed, especially the Dutch economy.
Yeah, okay. That's interesting to hear. I had not expected a different answer, actually, but it's also really good to see how deeply ingrained, actually, aviation is in our society, right? It's not just one company. It's ingrained with everything. It's maybe an interesting observation.
Well, I would like to see the government taking more effort to make Schiphol attractive for also other carriers. Schiphol, KLM is, and her partners have more than 50% of all the flight movement at Schiphol.
Yeah.
Let other carriers also connect Holland to the world. So I can see your point, Victor, but I can see that it can't be changed overnight, the dominant position of KLM. But I would like to have more diversity there.
Yeah, exactly. Which is, of course, a totally different discussion. Indeed, it's not about reducing flights, but about that interesting exchange. But maybe we should move a bit to the UT. So the UT, Victor, has showed really to be able to invent a lot of new methods to do teaching, to do research, to connect to each other again. I mean, of course, also from my own experience and from your own experience, it's been a huge change. So, do you think that things of this will last, and that when we go back to normal, that it will indeed be a new normal, or do you believe that this was a hiccup and that we will just move back to things as they used to be?
I believe there will be a new normal. I think that really everybody is sort of re-evaluating what was I doing and was it indeed necessary to do it this way? And was that indeed the most proficient way to do it? Clearly in education, I think that quite a number of people have understood that part of your education, definitely not all education, but part of your education can also be delivered digitally. And that is also the modus that we will work on next year. Massive hearings, big work sessions. You can do them as well digitally because there's hardly any interaction. And the same, I guess, also goes for research. I think that quite a number of people have found out that there is no need to be in the office or in your lab every day. So things are going to last. And also, I guess that from a perspective of demand, students will really ponder how they will want to enjoy their education. Obviously, universities will stay. I'm pretty sure about it, but they really have to be careful about what they are going to offer because quite a lot of what they are currently offering, and definitely in a digital form, can also be offered by other players in the market. And universities have to make sure that they offer something that is really competitive and distinguishing.
So, what do you think that the UT can do or should do to stay the kind of front runner that we are in many respects? Small scale education, society and technology combined. Is there a secret recipe that you're already trying?
Well, I think that precisely what you are saying is the secret recipe, or it's not so secret, but it is the recipe of the University of Twente. Indeed, a lot of interpersonal contact, small-scale education, a lot of socializing. That is really part of what the UT is about. And that is also why, now that we are preparing for the next year, the next academic year, we are really paying a lot of attention to make sure that at least that is being maintained or actually being reinstated, because now we lost it more or less. So next semester we will offer a blended form of education, wherein the massive meetings will not take place anymore, but we definitely want to make and create as much room and time for that interaction and for socializing.
Yeah, wonderful. Good to hear. Actually, my own impression is also that we might actually have a very good starting position as the UT, because small-scale education has always been our middle name, so to speak. And what I also noticed is that the distance to Twente, that for some people in the West still appears to be really large, that it suddenly becomes irrelevant. So people Skype in, you can give talks everywhere, and people suddenly don't feel the obstacle of moving all the way to Twente, and suddenly we're in the midst of the business. So I really hope that we can keep that up indeed. But of course, for students, it's not only about education, it's also about their personal development, socializing and study associations, doing sports. I think also there, the campus feeling. I have also been a student at the UT, so I know that feeling from within. It's a very important element of being a student at the UT. What do you think the UT could offer students for the coming study year to still keep a bit of that campus feeling alive?
Yeah, it's a good question. What we're going to do is try as much as we can. Alive next year will not be like it was last year. That is clear. We will have to obey the rules. The 1.5 meter university is there. But the good news is we indeed are on a 1.5 square kilometer campus, so we have a lot of space, and we're going to have that space work for us. So what we really are going to do is make sure that we are going to use every square meter at the campus to make sure that people can socialize, have dinner together, can sport together, can meet each other, and can have a lot of fun together. Because we fully agree, education and being at a university is not only about with your nose in the books, but also about growing up, finding out who you are, and making friends for life. So, and we're going to entertain that to the best we can.
Wonderful. Really wonderful that you say that. I hope it will be some kind of a consolation for students who really miss their interaction with the fellow students here right now. Maybe a last question. Research. So the interesting thing that you see is there was a lot of new energy among researchers to do work regarding the virus. You must have seen that as well. So is there some work for you that stands out in all the new projects that we have?
Yeah, every project that I would let stand out is actually more or less disappointing the rest, because I have a deep appreciation for everything that happened. The people who immediately after the crisis started were literally gluing stuff together to make sure that there were masks for corona patients, but also the students who won that huge EU hackathon. To make sure that students could ask questions to experts. And only today, the news about Accents, a spin-off of the University of Twente, who has found a really fast and convenient way to discover the virus over in 10 minutes, that you know whether someone is infected or not. Literally, investors are knocking on their door and say, can we invest in you, can we invest in you? That all of those are beautiful examples of how the University of Twente can, in a very lenient way and very clever, answer to that. But in the end, I believe we have hundreds of people who worked on solving all kinds of issues, and I have a lot of admiration for all of them.
Wonderful. Wonderful to hear, Victor. And actually also just very nice to see you again. Many things I would have wanted to ask you about building projects with the ITC building, shaping 2030. There's no time left anymore, maybe in some next episode. But very, very happy to see you again, and stay safe. See you soon. Then for the people who are watching, we now have a pre-recorded item. A student who actually may be exemplary for a situation in which many students are. Many students have a side job beside their studies because they don't want to be dependent entirely on their parents. Dafa Paramita is one of them, who works in a kind of restaurant here in Twente, and who might actually lose her job. So what are the consequences of this for her?
A lot of students earn money by working in restaurants and pubs. Because of the lockdown, they are not able to earn their living in these places. How do they cope with this? How does this affect their study, their life and their future? Dafa, you are working in a restaurant in Enschede. How do you cope with not being able to work?
I can loan from the Dutch government, so I do have a student loan and a student debt. But usually I just use that for my rent and for utilities and stuff like that. And then I use whatever I get from my work to pay for the stuff I want and not necessarily need. But now I can't really do that.
You are not exactly poor, but you miss the luxury.
Yeah, I do miss the luxury, and also because I know my parents are behind me, but of course as a student you want to earn your own money and to work for yourself, so that's something that's important to me as well. I don't want to loan more, but if it comes to the point where my savings are just gone and I can't find a job, then I will have to.
Do you know other students, maybe international students, who are more affected by not being able to work?
Yes, I have international friends actually who had to make the decision to go back home to their parents because they just couldn't afford to live in the Netherlands anymore.
So they quit?
Well, they didn't quit, but the lessons are online right now. So they prefer to be with their parents than to have to pay rent and like food, everything at the UT.
Because you don't work, do you study more?
Actually, yes, because now with the online lectures and the online education, I noticed that we have actually a lot more assignments than we had physically. And I know a lot of my classmates were actually redoing this module. So they had experience from last year where it was physical, and they did actually tell us that's a lot more than last year. because I think they were trying to compensate for the fact it's online and we don't have exams, like physical exams. So now actually the weekends I study more than I did before in other modules when it was physical. So it's not like I have more free time suddenly.
Some people think about a new economic system, not based on growth, but based on sustainability and solidarity. What are your views on a new economic system?
Well, if something like that could come up with the new times, I would not be surprised. But also, if anything new does come up, that does mean that it needs to be, with everything new, it needs to go through a phase of like accepting and like reforming. And I hope that whatever new comes up will have a smooth transition and not just, here you go. So if something new comes up, I would be happy to take part in it, but the way things were, I don't think we can go back to that anymore. So I'm curious to see what will happen, but I have no clue what that would mean.
So very good to see, and actually also very good to learn that maybe we make students work a bit too hard. We will try to take that into account, Dafa. So Hans, what do you think? Will this indeed have a lasting impact on the economy, and might students also in the future might need to borrow more money to be able to study?
I find it almost impossible to say something about that, especially it's not an aviation thing, you know. No. I would say that in 10 years' time or so, it will depend entirely whether we will get more pandemics or not. If we don't get any more pandemics, I think in 10 years' time things will have changed, but we will not, the generation of 10 years from now will not attribute it to the pandemic. They would just see it as a normal way of doing things.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, of course, this is really hard to say. Still, the future, how the future will be, is a topic at which our next guest is working. Anneke Sols from the Story Lab of the University of Twente. Welcome, Anneke. Anneke is working on a project that invites people to share their visions of the future, also to get an understanding of the impact of the crisis on society, but maybe also maybe a bit more normative about what people might feel the future should be and not only might be. So Anneke, you just started a project which is called Will the World Never Be the Same? And you ask people to envision what their futures and the world should look like after the virus. So why do you ask for desired futures?
The idea is that the corona crisis is a bit different and unique when compared to other crises that have been before, in the sense that it really evoked a lot of positive visions for the future and hope that the world could change. So this phrase, "Will the world never be the same?" is something that we saw popping up in a lot of countries around the world. And this is why we thought, well, if this is the momentum that people feel that a different world is possible, what should it look like? We wanted to investigate this, and also we think it doesn't happen automatically. So you have to really think about how you can make a different world, how you can create that world. So that's why we ask for desired futures.
Yeah, wonderful.
And also another aspect of the desired future is that it also gives you a sense of agency, of being an actor in history, and a sense of hope, because a lot of people can also feel overwhelmed by the crisis. There are lots of negative impacts on the lives of many people. It's a very disruptive event. So to have a sense that things can become better out of it is also, I think, important for that reason.
Very interesting to hear. Actually, the line is not that good, so it almost even sounds like your voice is coming from the future. Kind of a robotic voice. But we will manage. So but this is very interesting to hear, because, of course, what you say is this is not only doing research to understand something about the future, but it's also actually to help people or to empower people to cope with the crisis. So I happen to know that this comes from an approach within psychology, which is called something like positive psychology. Can you explain a bit what that is and what kind of role it plays in this project?
Yes, so it is kind of an action research approach. We ask people to write a letter from the future, which is a creative exercise where people are asked to travel with a time machine to the future and imagine that the future is realized, the future they want to see. And this time jump to the future, that's really a pivotal aspect of this exercise. In the sense that if you break away from the present and take a fresh perspective from the future, this can help you create really new ideas about what the world should look like. Because if you start imagining the future,
we are actually losing you a little bit now. I'm not sure if you can hear me still, but the answer was really interesting, and I think we all got the point that indeed the research that you do is not only about understanding what goes wrong with people, but actually to empower people to flourish, as it were. And the project that you are doing might contribute to that in a sense. So you ask people to write a letter from the future, and actually there is a question from the people who are watching, and the question is, what is the most remarkable letter that you have received so far? So can you give an answer to that already?
Yeah, that's a very nice question. So, and I love reading the letters, I must say. So, one letter that really struck me is, and this is from someone 17 years old, and she envisions a future where her grandparents have died because of the virus, but still she sees this as a positive future, because she sees all the positive things of dealing with the crisis, coming out of it, having a sense of family and everything. So I think those kinds of letters are really moving in that they don't just picture a positive future without any troubles in it, but actually make people think about what is worthwhile in life, what is valuable for me.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. So why did you choose for a letter? Why a letter? Why not an interview or an email or a text message? Why a letter?
Yeah, so a letter it's helping you to really reflect. So in the writing, so it is both reflecting, but it's also creative. So if you do it spontaneously and don't think too much, you come in a creative flow, and then new ideas can come up, and you can really be surprised sometimes by your own writing. So that's one aspect of it, and also that we want people to really tell a story about the future and think about what it would look like, and writing gives another dimension to that.
Interesting. So actually the activity of writing gives you a concentration that is also different than typing an email or sending a text message. It gives you depth, as it were. Interesting to hear. I mean, it also seems to link to a lot of work that's currently being done under the header of citizen science, where citizens increasingly play a role in scientific work, where they are also put in the role of the expert, and not only in the role of the people who are on the kind of receiving end of science. Would you list your work now also as citizen science? Can we say that?
Well, actually, we had a discussion this week. My colleague Yashar is a philosopher, and we work on this project together, whether it is citizen science or not. And I would say it has some aspects of it because it's very open to the perspective of people. So we listen to their own words, their own language, their own metaphors, and what matters to them. So it can be used for agenda setting. But they don't collect their own data, which is also something that happens a lot in citizen science. So I think it's a sort of, it can be part of it and contribute to that kind of science.
Interesting to hear. But of course, indeed, as I hear you speak, it is actually not only about doing research in the sense of answering a research question. You also want to intervene. You want to help people, to empower people to cope with the crisis. So in that sense, it's maybe almost a form of psychotherapy. Could I say that?
Yeah, I can totally understand. Also, this exercise is used for coaching purposes, for career advice, study advice, and thinking about the student, for example, that we saw some minutes before, talking about her study situation. I think it can be very useful for that as well. So she could use the letter to jump to the future with a time machine, say a few months ahead or a year ahead, and think about her current predicament. And then imagine herself successfully coping with the situation. And that can really give a sense of empowerment, well, if you see yourself doing it. And another thing that we recommend doing in this kind of exercise is that you jump to several points in time, so also further ahead. So in this case, if the student would look from 10 years ahead, or maybe even from the end of her own life, then you get a very broad perspective on your predicament, and maybe you see, well, in the whole balance of a life, maybe the situation is not so bad after all, because I learned how to deal with crisis. That can help me with other setbacks in life, and maybe if there comes a new pandemic, I'm more resilient to dealing with that.
Wonderful. It also brings quite a responsibility, actually, I think, for you as scientists to deal respectfully and carefully with the things that you read. So I also heard that this is part of a EU-wide team of people. So this is not only happening within the Netherlands, but it's happening in many other countries: Estonia, Denmark, Finland, Germany. What do you hope to get from the comparison? Is there a different pattern, for instance, between countries? And if so, what can we learn from that?
Yeah, so one aspect that we think is very interesting is that all these countries have different crisis histories. So, for example, Greece had the 2008 socio-economic crisis, and therefore they are more, have more experience with a situation like that, with high unemployment rates, for example. And we see that is very different from the Netherlands, and that also the letters we get tend to be more politicized. So, like the aviation industry being a political industry as well, it also is all the funds that are being allocated over Europe. The Greeks seem to be very aware of all the politics involved in that.
Interesting. Wow. Good to hear. Very interesting work, Anneke. So, I hope that everyone who is watching will send you this letter. They can probably find the project online. We will tweet about it. Maybe that's a good thing to agree upon, so that everybody can contribute to your exciting work. Thank you for being here with us. Wonderful. Hans.
Thank you for having me.
If you would send a letter from the future about the situation now, would there be things that you hope that would change in your life, or how do you see your own future in relation to the virus?
My own future, or the future of
your own future? Yeah.
Well, I'm 61 years old now, so my future is limited. I think
40 years to go.
40 years to go. I already put much of my education on video, so that is. I think that should. What I would like to do is still do more research and more. I'm very busy with unmanned cargo aircraft, and I would like to see them fly and be a regular part of the economy. And also, I would like to help retarded areas, both in Western Europe, for example, Wales, where we have contacts, and in the developing countries, to be more part of the global economy and to make more efficient use of their resources. Yes. I think that would be something that I would really like to do.
Interesting. Okay, so you really believe that the crisis also brings a future for your working life. That's interesting to hear. So, actually, we have really talked a lot now on the UT, on our country, but we have also zoomed out to the entire world. And of course, there are a lot of people who studied at the University of Twente who are now living in other countries. So it's of course also interesting to ask, how are they coping with the crisis? Joe Laufer, who works with them, is involved in an initiative of the 4 Dutch technical universities to connect all these former students. So every week there is an online meeting organized for them, and we can now watch how he talks with a former student of the University of Twente, Björn Haring, San Francisco, where he's living now, principal scientist at the Leiden Measurement Technology Company. So let's see what the impact of the virus is on his life.
If you think that our alumni in the Netherlands are having a challenging time with the crisis, think about our alumni outside of the Netherlands, and particularly Dutch expats who are living in other countries, what the crisis means to them. Accessing the alumni network now is probably more relevant than ever for those people. And that's why in the first few weeks of the crisis, together with counterparts from the other technical universities, we came up with a special format for an online event that brings people together, that helps them connect easily with each other and identify people from their local area or their country who could be a support element for them during this period. And over the past 8 weeks, we've had 7 events, and we've heard a lot of interesting stories in these events. And here's one example from an event that we held on the West Coast.
Bjorn, hello, our keynote speaker from our event on the West Coast.
And basically, I'm a professor in a small company, and we work on building prototype instruments for life detection on other planets and moons, and specifically ocean worlds, and for instance, the moon Europa around Jupiter.
Okay, and does that actually have implications to COVID-19?
So funny enough, a lot of the requirements for NASA are everything has to be small, low weight, and shouldn't use a lot of power. So a lot of that stuff really relates to point of care technologies.
People, how has the crisis impacted your life there?
I was supposed to go to the Netherlands and actually get married, which did not happen. My parents are supposed to come here in June to meet her, and then now, end of May, we should be traveling to the Netherlands to get married. So yeah, that's the biggest impact that's currently not happening.
You know, and hopefully the crisis won't lead to even marriages being virtual ceremonies. That would be too weird.
That would be terrible.
Prost.
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 Prost, guys. So that's quite something, a marriage being postponed. And that might have happened to more people, actually. We look forward to hearing your stories. Please send them to us if you have them. So this will be then the end of this episode. So I would like to thank everyone involved, especially, of course, Hans. It was also really, really good to see you again. Wonderful. So in 2 weeks, we have our last episode before summer starts. We take a closer look at the medical work that is being done in the TechMed Center. Yesterday, there was a lot of news about the e-nose that is being detected made to detect the virus. But in Twente, we work on an e-eye, an optical sensor with which we might see the sensor, the virus. Sonia Garcia will be in the studio with us to discuss that. And of course, there will be many more items. Stay tuned, the 23rd of June, and stay healthy, stay safe. Hope to see you then. Bye-bye.